Hi guys, today we'll be solving leetcode question 128 longest consecutive subsequence. So we are given an unsorted array of integers. We have to return the length of the longest consecutive element sequence. We must return it in O of n time complexity. So we can see it in the first example. We have the longest subsequence. Longest sequence is 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try and solve it. So what we could do is we could try to start thinking, and the first thing we could think of is the brute force solution, that we go around from the first element and then we keep checking if the element next to it exists, and then we can check here, then we can see. So this is a brute force approach, and it would take O of n square time complexity. We could do something better, and we could try to reduce the time complexity by sorting it. If we try and sort it, it would become 1, 2, 3, 4, 100, 200. So the time complexity of sorting would be O of big O of n log n. And then we can check if it exists. If from this first element we can check if the next sequence exists, we can increment the counter. If the next exists, we can increment the counter. If the next exists, we can increment the counter. The next does not exist, so we can stop and we can start a new counter and we can check. At the end, we should take the maximum of all the sequences that we have encountered and we should return that. Let's look at its code. So this is the code for the slightly optimized version of by sorting. We can see that if it's 0, we can just return 0. If we can sort it, it'll take O of n log n time complexity. And then we have a current count and we have a longest count. So we start the first for loop and we are checking that if the previous element is not the same as the current element, we can go ahead and we can start checking if the previous element and the next element are in a sequence. If so, we'll increment the counter and we'll keep doing it till we keep finding the consecutive sequence. If not so, we'll update the longest counter and we'll check which is the maximum of current counter and the longest counter, and then we'll reset the current counter, and then we'll return the max of longest counter and the current counter. So what we are given a constraint that we should do it in O of n time complexity. So what we can do is we can use a hash map. We can use a hash map to store all the elements, and we can easily access them as and when we require them. Let's build a hash map. So the first element is 0, we put it in, and then we see the next element. So we check if it's, we put in 0, and then we check the next element, we put 3, then we check the next element, that is 7. So when we put in 0, it means that the next element of 0, that 1 can never be the start of the sequence. So 0 is the start of sequence. When we put in 3, it means that 4 can never be the start of sequence. When we put in 7 and 8 exists, it means 8 can never be the start of sequence. Then we put 2, put 5, 8, we put 4 6 0 1. Okay, 0 exists, so we need not put it twice, it'll just go in the same place. Now we try to find if -1, we'll start from the first element in the hash map and we'll check if -1 exists, we would not start the sequence. But if -1 does not exist, in this case we would start the sequence of counting. We'll see if 1 exists, 1 exists, we'll see if 2 exists, we'll see if 3 exists, we'll check if 4 exists, 5 exists, 6 exists, 7 exists, and 8 exists. So that will be incrementing our counter. So let's try and look at the code. So this is the code. We store an answer array and then we put all the elements in a hash map. In this case it's a set, in C++ it's a set, and then we initialize the counter and we check and we put num is equal to the next element, because we have checked here that if the element previous to the current element exists in the sequence, if we have 1, does 0 exist? If 0 does not exist, it will return map.end, it means it does not exist. So we can be sure that we can start the sequence from 1, and then we'll start from the next element. We'll start from 2. We'll check if 2 exists in the map, it means that it is not on the end. We'll increment the counter and then we'll also increment the number, and we'll keep doing it till we find the next consecutive elements in the map. Finally, when we'll reach the end of the map, we'll just check which is the maximum and we'll update the answer, and finally we'll return the answer count. Let's look at the Java code. This is the Java code, which is very similar to the C++ code. I hope you understood from the video. If you liked it, do share and subscribe.